Great day today. I will discuss about the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which will be focusing on adolescents. So let's start. So the coverage of this discussion is about the overview about the MMPI, the MMPI-2, the MMPIA, and lastly, the administering of MMPIA. So first, what is MMPI? So the MMPI or the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory is a psychological test that assesses personality traits and psychopathology. It is primarily intended to test people who are suspected of having mental health or other clinical issues, although it was not originally designed to be administered to non-clinical populations. So it means that MMPI is only assessed in clinical settings at binibigay lang po siya sa mga patients or persons na suspected na may clinical problems to know their personality traits and if present ba sa kanila ang psychopathology. So the MMPI has four validity scale. So the first one is the lie. So from the word lie, it is intended to identify individuals who are deliberately trying to avoid answering the MMPI honestly and in frank manner. And the scale measures attitude and practices that culturally laudable but rarely found in most people. In other words, people who make these items are often trying to make themselves look like a better person than they really are. So, ibig sabihin, lie, nagsisinungaling ka. So, sinasagutan mo yung assessment na yon na hindi nagpapakatotoo para magmukha kang better or good sa test taker. Next one is the F scale. Ano nga po ba ang F scale? The F scale, F does not stand for anything, although it is mistakenly sometimes referred to as an infrequency or frequency scale, is intended to detect unusual or atypical ways of answering the test items, like a person were to or randomly fill out the test. So, ibig sabihin, hinuhulaan niya lang kung ano yung isasagot niya because it taps a number of strange thoughts, peculiar experiences, feeling of isolation, and alienation. Ibig sabihin, nararamdaman niya na yung withdrawal or yung isolation doon sa test. And a number of unlikely or contradictory beliefs. Hindi siya naniniwala doon sa mga nakalagay na questions doon sa items, expectation, and self-description. Mas naniniwala siya sa kung ano yung pinaniniwalaan niya. If a person answer too many of the F and FV scale items incorrectly, it will invalidate the entire test, contrary to some description of the scale. F scale items are scattered throughout the entire test up until around the item 360. Ibig sabihin, randomly po siyang nakalagay sa overall item scale ng MMPI-A. So, next one is the back F. The back F scale measures the same issue as the F scale, except only during the last half of the test, the scale has 40 items. So, same as F, parehas lang po siya ng sinusukat and it is contains of 40 items. Randomly, nakascatter din po siya throughout the items. And lastly is the K-scale for the validity scale. It is designed to identify psychopathology in people who otherwise would have profiles within the normal range. It measures self-control and family and interpersonal relationship, and people who score highly on this scale are often seen as being defensive. The scale contains 30 items. So, yung mga tao na nagsagot ng mas mataas, ibig sabihin may may itinatago or self-control. Ayan, nagiging defensive sila kasi nakikita po yun. Next one. The MMPI is currently commonly administered in 1 to 2 forms. So, may dalawang klase po ng MMPI. So, first is the MMPI-2. So, ayan, the MMPI-2 contains 567 true or false question. Ina-administer lang po siya sa mga adults within the ages of 18 to 65 years old. And then, usually, it takes about 60 to 90 minutes to complete the entire assessment. Still, the more widely used test, ibig sabihin, siya po yung mas ginagamit ng karamihang psychologists because siya po yung mas kilala. Then, meron po siyang 10 clinical subscale, yung MMPI-2. So, in 2008, may lumabas na newer measure or mas pinaikling version nitong MMPI-2 which we called MMPI-2RF. It contains 338 true or false items and mas maikli po siya kapag tinake mo. It usually contains about 40 to 50 minutes to finish the test. Pero ina-administer pa rin po siya same as in adult settings. Next one na types ng MMPI po is the MMPI-A. It is discovered in 1992 and is designed exclusively for teenagers who ages 14 to 18 years old. It takes 45 minutes to an hour to complete the test and has 478 true or false items. Ayun po. Ginagamit tong MMPI-A to know the personality and psychopathology among adolescents. Kung sila po ba ay present in hypochondriasis, depression, hysteria, psychopathic deviate, masculinity, femininity, paranoia, psychasthenia, psychosophrenia, hypomania, and social introversion. Ayan. This entire discussion po pala ay iikot lamang sa MMPI-A. Ibig sabihin, it will only focusing on these categories. MMPI-A, going back, it can only be given and interpreted by a psychologist trained to do so. You cannot find the test online. Ibig sabihin, nililimit po yung pseudo-psychologists, which is the non-professional who are giving the exam or taking risk to have a diagnosis to other people, which is wrong. And preceded by a clinical interview by the psychologist who is doing the test. Ibig sabihin, psychologist lamang ang makakapag-interpret ng lahat ng resulta na ma-obtain sa psychological assessment na MMPI-A. After the computer scores the test results, the psychologist writes up a report interpreting the test results in the context of the person's history and current psychological concern. So, binibigyan po ng grade or scores yung MMPI based sa pag-grade or pag-grado ng psychologists and through computers. So, after daw po na mabigyan na ng test scores or result, yung psychological assessment na ginawa natin, ngayon, i-interpret po yon ng isang psychologist base po sa person history and sa current psychological concerns po nung taong nag-take ng assessment. So, to clear things out, meron pong two types. Again, ang MMPI. The first one is the MMPI-2 and the next one is the MMPI-A. MMPI-2, current standardized version for adults 18 and over. To be exact, 65 years old. The MMPI-2 has released in 1989 with a subsequent revision of certain test elements in early 2001 and 2008, which is the MMPI-2 RF. Next one is the MMPIA. The MMPIA is a version of the inventory developed specifically for adolescents aged 14 to 18 and was published in 1992. So, what is MMPI-2 means? So, MMPI-2 is a 567 items with true or false self-report measures of a person's psychological state. It has 10 validity scales or lie scales, assessing for lying, defensiveness, faking good and faking bad, and among others. It takes most people between 1 hour and 90 minutes to complete the MMPI-2. The measure has many clinical scales assessing mental health problems. For example, is the depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, or the PTSD, person characteristics, psychopathy, and general personality traits such as anger, somatization, hypochondriasis, type A behavior, addiction potential, poor ego strength, and many others. The MMPI-2 are used to assess psychological stability in workers in high-risk professions such as airline pilots, police, or workers in the nuclear power industry. So, the MMPI-2 ay karaniwan pong ina-assess sa mga adults. And kalimitan po itong binibigay sa mga working employees. Katulad ng may mga high risk or yung laging napapasabak halimbawa sa mga gera, ayan po. Kasi pwede po silang magkaroon ng trauma sa mga bagay na na-encounter nila. And we all know that adulting is so very exhausting. Ayan. Nabanggit ko po kanina earlier na merong 10 clinical subscale ang MMPI-2. The older MMPI-2 is made up 10 clinical subscale which are a result of answering certain questions on the test in specific manner. So the first one is the hypochondriasis. So the hypochondriasis scale states a wide variety of vague and non-specific complaints about bodily functioning. These complaints tend to focus on the abdomen and back, and they persist in the face of negative medical tests. There are two primary factors that these subscales measure. Number one is the poor physical health and gastrointestinal difficulties. Ayan. Sa hypochondriasis daw po, ito po yung mga tao na nagko-complains about sa kanilang abdomen, sa tiyan, at sa parting likod. Ito po yung gastrointestinal, yung feeling na umakyat yung acid mo papunta sa heart or nagkakaroon ka ng heartburn. Ayun po. Yung resulta po nito is nagkakaroon ng poor physical health. Ayun nga po. Tsaka difficulty sa gastrointestinal. Yung scale na to is consist sa items ng 32 items. And then the next one is the depression. Symbolizes for D. The depression scales measure clinical depression, which characterized by poor morale, lack of hope in the future, and general dissatisfaction with one's life. The scales contain 57 items. So we all know the depression, popularly known by the psychology society, psychology students, depression, ayan, kapag very very sad and very anxious po ang isang tao, ayan, and hindi unorganized po yung thoughts niya, ayon, and dissatisfaction sa buhay na meron siya. And then next, third one is the hysteria. The hysteria scale primarily measures 5 components: the poor physical health, the shyness, the cynicism, headaches, and neuroticism. Una is poor physical health. Ayan. Hysteria, yung po yung mga tao, yung biglang naninigas or nanginginig po yung kamay or yung buong katawan. Shyness, ayan, may hiltulad sila sa mga taong nahihiya. Cynicism, while the cynicism po is yun yung mga tao na may negative opinions about other people's and about the things, people di especially. Ibig sabihin, lagi po silang may thoughts na na kakaiba or negative opinions about other people. Next one is the headaches yon, sumasakit ulo nila, and neuroticism. Ayan. And then, the fourth one is the psychopathic deviate. The psychopathic deviate scale measures general social maladjustment and the absence of strongly pleasant experience. The items on this scale tap into complaints about family and authorities, figures in general, self-alienation, social alienation, and the boredom. So, the psychodeviate po is nagko-complaints po sila about sa kanilang pamilya at sa mga authorities figures. Halimbawa, sa government, lagi silang nagko-complain. Tapos, meron po silang self-withdrawal. Ibig sabihin, hindi agad sila nakapag-adjust sa isang sitwasyon. Or bago sila makapag-adjust, sobrang hirap po para sa kanila yon. And boredom, ayun, lagi silang bored. And then the fifth one is the masculinity or the femininity. The masculinity or the femininity scales measure interest in vocations and hobbies, aesthetics, preferences, activity, positivity, and personal sensitivity. It measures in a general sense how rigidly a person conforms to very stereotypical masculine or feminine roles. Ayun. Paano daw po nila ginagaya or paano sila nag-a-adjust sa stereotypical na masculine or femininity roles sa society. And then, the sixth one is the paranoia. The paranoia scale primarily measures interpersonal sensitivity, moral self-righteousness, and suspiciousness. Some of the items used to score these scales are clearly psychotic in that they acknowledge the existence of paranoid and delusional thoughts. This scale has 40 items. So, paranoia, iniisip po nila na laging lahat ng tao or laging lahat ng may encounter nilang bagay is suspicious and may panganib na dala sa kanila. So, it means na lagi silang nag-overthink. Yung po yung pinagsisimula nun. And then, the next one, the seventh one is the psychasthenia or the PT. The psychasthenia scale is intended to measure a person's inability to resist specific actions or thoughts, regardless of their maladaptive nature. Psychasthenia is an old term used to describe what we now call obsessive-compulsive disorder or having obsessive-compulsive thoughts and behaviors. This scale also taps into abnormal fears, self-criticism, difficulties in concentration, and guilt feelings. This scale contains 48 items. Psychasthenia, ibig sabihin, ito daw po yung mga tao na hindi nila napipigilan yung actions and thoughts nila sa isang maladaptive nature. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila nasasatisfy sa isang bagay. Like an OCD person, kahit sobrang ayos na, ayusin niya pa rin ang aayusin. Basta may nakita siyang mali sa bagay na yon. And then, ayun, tinataps niya din po yung abnormal feel, self-criticism, difficult in concentration, tsaka nagkakaroon siya ng guilt feelings. Next one, or the eighth one, is the psychosophrenia. The psychosophrenia scale measures bizarre thoughts, peculiar perception, social alienation, poor familial relationship, difficulties in concentration, and impulse control, lack of deep interest, disturbing question of self-worth and self-identity, and sexual difficulties. This scale has 78 items, more than any other scales on the test. So, si psychosophrenia diagnosis is, siya yung pinakamaraming items daw po sa MMPI test or the MMPIA. Si psychosophrenia, ito daw po yung mga tao na unusual yung thoughts nila or yung mga perception nila, yung kinikilos nila kakaiba sa kinikilos ng ibang tao. Social alienation, withdrawal to someone or to withdrawal socially, poor familial relationship, hindi na nila matandaan or makilala yung mga taong nakapaligid sa kanila. Difficulties in concentration, hindi agad makapag-focus or makapag-concentrate sa isang task na ginagawa. Impulse control, ibig sabihin gagawin nila kung ano yung gagawin nila, sasabihin nila kung ano yung naiisip nila. Lack of deep interest, withdrawal in a substance, ayun po, nawalan sila ng gana sa mga dating bagay na karaniwang ginagawa nila. Disturbing question of self-worth, self-identity, laging dinadoubt ang sarili or laging binababa ang sarili. And sexual difficulties, ayan po, hindi po nila alam kung babae sila or lalaki. And sexual difficulties, wala na po sila sa tamang pag-iisip. Next is the hypomania or the MA. The hypomania, hypo, scale is intended to measure milder degrees of excitement characterized by an elevated but unstable mood, psychomotor excitements like shaky hands and flight of ideas, an unstoppable string of ideas. The scale taps into overactivity both behaviorally and cognitively, grandiosity, irritability, and egocentricity. These scales contains 46 items. Hypomania, ibig sabihin, ito daw po yung mga patients or person na nagkakaroon ng milder excitement sa mga bagay-bagay. It is categorized sa mania po, sa bipolar disorders. And ayun po, unstable mood, pabago-bago, mood swings, psychomotor excitement, ibig sabihin, bigla-bigla na lang na-excite or nagkakaroon ng shaky hands, flight of ideas, bigla-bigla na lang may umuusbong na ideas na gagawin ko to, and then unstoppable string of ideas, ayun, parang tuloy-tuloy or ang kulit, ganon. The scale taps into overactivity, both behaviorally and cognitive. Ayan. Grandiosity, ibig sabihin, grandiose, puro sa kanya lang, like egocentricity, puro tungkol lang sa kanya lahat. Irritability, mabilis ma-irritate dahil nga sa mood swings. Next is, or lastly, is the social intervention. The SI or the social intervention scale measures the social introversion and extroversion of a person. A person who is social introvert is uncomfortable in social interactions and typically withdraws from such interactions whenever possible. They may have limited social skills or seemingly prepared to be alone or with a small group of friends. This scale has 69 items. So, social introversion, from the word introversion, they like to be alone and to be with other people, but sobrang unti po, lesser lang, and they have a fear on talking with other people. Who is extrovert? Ayan. Next one is the MMPIA. Ayan, yung clinical subscales po ng MMPI-2 tsaka ng MMPIA are the same lang po. So, let's go to the MMPIA, or A stands for adolescence. So, MMPIA, adolescence inventory is shorter than the standard adult version. So, kung yung MMPI-2 or yung adult version is nagko-consist ng sobrang habang items, which have 567 items. Ito naman pong MMPIA or adolescent test ay nagkakaroon lamang ng 478 true or false items or questions. And it takes 45 minutes to an hour para makomplete po yung assessment na to. Here is also a short form of the test that is comprises of the first 350 items from the long form MMPIA. So, may isang short form po tong exam na to or etong pang-adolescents. Kung mas pinaiksi pa yung 478, meron pa po siyang isang short form which is contains 350 items. The question asked on the MMPIA are designed to evaluate the thoughts, emotions, attitude, and behavioral traits that comprises personality. So, ginagamit po itong MMPIA or MMPI-Adolescent para malaman yung iniisip, nararamdaman, yung attitudes at behavioral traits ng mga kabataan. And specifically, it ages 14 to 18. Ayan, yan yung mga crucial stage. And then, the result of the test reflect an adolescent's personality strength and weaknesses, and may identify certain disturbances of personality, psychopathologies, or mental deficit caused by neurological problems. So, yung resulta daw po ng exam ay nagre-reflect sa kung paano yung batang yon or the adolescents mag-isip, kung ano yung strength niya, kung ano yung weaknesses niya, kung meron ba siyang presence ng psychopathology sa kanyang behavioral traits, and then kung meron daw po siyang problems sa kanyang neurotic or sa kanyang pag-iisip. Ayan, the T-score. So, sa T-score po, ayan po yung basihan kung normal ba yung tao na nag-take ng test na yon. So, sa T-score, kapag ang patient daw po or yung test taker natin is nakakuha ng 30 to 120 score, ibig sabihin yun yung range na okay po yung okay siya okay siya. Parang yan po yung pinaka-basis criteria. Next one, masasabing normal yung patient kapag, or the test taker, kung 50 to 65 yung test scores niya. And then, clinically significant and open for interpretation by the psychologist naman po kapag nakascore daw po siya ng above 65 and anything below 50. Ayan. So, ayan. Nabanggit ko na din po to earlier. The Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory are most widely used as the personality test or the structured test, to be specific. So, the administering of MMPIA is here po. Ayan. That's the reference. I will insert the administering of MMPIA after this discussion. Ayun po. If you have any questions, you can kindly email me at peñalbamichelle27@gmail.com, and I am currently studying at National College of Science and Technology, Dasmariñas, Cavite. That's all po. Thank you and have a nice day. Great day! I'm Miss Michelle Peñalba and I will be your administrator in today's psychological assessment, which is the MMPI or entitled Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which will be focusing on adolescents ages 14 to 18 years old only. This exam contains 478 item questions, true or false, and you will be given 45 minutes to 1 hour to complete the test. These MMPIA are designed to evaluate your thoughts, emotions, attitudes, and behavioral traits, while the result of the examination will reflect on your personality strengths and weaknesses and identify neurological problems and psychopathologies. And this lead us to the end. Thank you for your time and attention, and good luck.